Hey everybody, welcome to the KindFaith for the weekend. I wanted to talk about something we don't get to talk about often enough. When we meet, there's always that handout, and so much of it stays the same. And part of that's on purpose. We have a desire to worship well, but it's not just about when we gather. And so I wanted to take some time this morning to talk to us and kind of remind us of what we're trying to do together when we gather and as we live our lives as a community and kind faith tribe. And so there's these always questions. I'll just point it out on my iPad. They're right down here at the bottom, always on the bottom right. And on these questions, there's three. And I want to talk through them. The first one is, how did we worship well? And how will we worship well in this coming week? Worship is so much more than just when we gather and sing and praise. We've got activities of worship that occur all the time, from the way we treat other people to the way we treat ourselves to all sorts of things that are worship oriented. And I want to invite you to think that question through for this week. How are you going to worship well? At work, at home, with your family, in your neighborhood? How are you going to worship God well? And what does that actually look like? It means to value the worth of God over other things. So as you think about your home life, how do you worship God in your home life? You bring him to the center and you value his character qualities over the other things that are swirling around, and you look to him for guidance and direction. You prioritize God's priorities in the areas of your relationships, in the areas of work. So how will you worship well? That's question number one. The second one, which we haven't been talking about a lot, we talk about worship well every weekend because we're gathering to worship well. But the next one is, how do we and I make disciples in this coming week? What are you doing to invite people to follow Jesus? What are you doing to invite people to follow Jesus? I was driving the other day and I saw, I think it's a pest control company, the Pied Piper Pest Control Company, and they had the picture of the Pied Piper with the rats all following him out, which I guess that's a great marketing ploy. It's just weird to me. But there's something about that story that is this childhood fairy tale of bringing something winsome to draw to instead of push away. And where are you bringing something winsome into the places that you live that draw people not to you, but to the God they see working in you? The biggest way to do that is to share stories of the way God's worked in you. And so how will you share the stories of what God has done in and around you? We do the prayer time every week with the Kind Faith. Well, not every week, it's not traditional, but recently we've been asking, how did God show up to you and for you? And it's a beautiful moment of testimony where people get to share. And that shouldn't be restricted to the people of God, because the rest of the world wants to see God moving, wants to know God's real. And they're not going to get there through intellectual, rational reasoning, right? Some people do, but that's rare. Usually people get there because they see God's reality in your life. So how are you going to make God real to the people around you? How are you going to put him on display? And then the last question is, how will I make an impact for the kingdom this week? How will I impact this world and bring change to this world? How do you bring change to the world? And how will you? It might be that you've got control over policies at work and you can bring more kingdom-oriented policies to your workplace. That's pretty amazing. It might be that you can bring a sense of kingdom generosity to an organization That's what we've been working on as a church. How do we missionally engage our world with the resources God's given us to make an impact? And it's not just the church, it's you as an individual. So those are our 3 questions. How do I worship well? How do I make disciples? How do I make an impact for the kingdom? Let's keep those top of mind and in front of us as we do this work of the Kind Faith. It's what we're about. It's what we're created to do and be. And so I invite you, ask those questions, maybe even mark them as something you do at the beginning of every week or when you leave the Kind Faith worship service on the weekend. How am I going to worship well? How am I going to make disciples? How am I going to impact this world for God's kingdom? Ask those questions. Let's live that out together. God bless you. Thanks.